The Smiths. This is what's funny. I don't know if it's funny. I looked at the Smiths as a band that I thought I would never get into. I thought they looked cool because Morrissey had the hair and he's a good looking guy, and
Yeah.
Johnny and all the other dudes in the band had like a thing. And when I was in not middle school, high school, there were these two girls that were like the hot alt grunge chicks in my group, Courtney, and I want to say her name's Amanda. I know I'm going to fuck it up. It's not Amanda. And they went to go see Morrissey somewhere in Washington, D.C. And then they came back to the smoking section the next day and they were just like, oh my God, like I touched him. He gave me a flower and a this and a that. And I was like, who is this band? She's like, it's Morrissey from the Smiths. And I'm like, who are this? I was like, if they're not Stone Temple Pilots, I could give a fuck.
Mhm.
And this is the thing is, as the years went on, it was a band that when I would hear a song, I just didn't get it. I didn't get it. Did it take time for you to become a fan of the Smiths?
Yes and no. So I grew up, my older brother was in the punk scene in North Jersey growing up. So like his best friend ran a fanzine and they used to put on shows in the basement of this church at town. In our town, it was all small local bands, and I'd be like bouncing around to backyard shows and VFW halls and like skate rinks that they'd rent out for the night. And it was just like mostly local bands. And as we got more and more into it, I grew up in North Jersey, so we could go to New York City and see bands. Bands would, sometimes bands would slum it and come out and
Come to Jersey because we're
play
like, we got to hit a
Jersey
Wawa, dude. We try to hit a Wawa. There's
a
no
little
Wawas
bit.
in New York
Yeah,
City. Yeah,
exactly. Or like, we didn't make as much as we thought in New York at our New York gigs. So let's try to just pick up like some extra gas money on the way out of town and play a show in Jersey. And
yeah.
I wound up back then, that was like the mid to late 90s. And there was this local band called the Lavalinas. They covered Ask, and they were like, this is covered by a band called the Smiths, and they played it, and it was just a demonstrably better song than like this band from Little Falls, New Jersey was farting out at the time. No offense to the Lavalinas, they would agree. I was like, whoa, that song ruled. And then I got really into this band from San Francisco called J Church, and I picked up one of their 7-inches, and it had a cover of Girlfriend in a Coma. I was like, this song is rad. Realized that was a Smiths cover. And then I saw H2O, hardcore band from New York. They came and played out in Jersey one night, and they played a cover of Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now. And it was another Smiths cover. So it was like all these bands that I liked were covering the Smiths. So I was hearing these like punky cover versions of them.
So not the actual. So you're the first time you're hearing the Smiths, it's from a different band from Jersey or coming to
Yeah,
Jersey. So they're not even playing the original version. They're just playing their
playing
interpretation of it.
punked
Yeah.
up. Yeah, like and kudos to these like talented people in H2O and J Church, and I'm sure the Lavalinas, they were a bunch of high school kids at the time, but these were not people with Johnny Marr's guitar skills by any means.
Yeah.
They were doing like let's boil it down to the punk covers. So
This charming man can
a little
oi,
bit,
oi.
yeah, a little bit, and yeah, that got me very, very curious about them. And there was a weird thing back then, which like punk kids really loved the Smiths, and also in Jersey, a lot of like skinheads like the Smiths, like a lot of super tough dudes that you didn't want to fuck with were like avowed Smiths and Morrissey fans. So
Why do you think that? Because this is the whole thing that the range of people that I met. I don't want to cut you off. I want you to finish this.
for sure.
But the range of people that like the Smiths is anywhere from the most intellectual of the intellectual, philosophy professors at college. I remember we had one that we'd walk into a classroom, we'd be listening to the Smiths, and I was like, this. Like, dude, like it's every day. And then you see, women. And then the one that gets me more than anything, which I feel like we can go on 20 minutes about, are Latinos.
Yeah.
Latinos. And that's the thing is that it's like, I get that because they're emotional. It's about love, but these hardcore skinheads, like straight edge people.
Yeah. I remember seeing Morrissey in 2004 or 2003 in Los Angeles, and I was a fan. And I had heard, oh, he's really big amongst the Mexican community, but I had no idea. I went and saw him at the Wiltern in LA, and I was like, this is not the Mexican version of me all showing up. This is like jacked, sleeve tattooed,
Yeah.
like dudes who look like they're like from the streets.
Yeah, dude. Yo,
Showing up with
essay,
little
man. MS-13. Hold on, man. You put on this track for Amita's murder, Holmes.
and like, dude, like rolling up to this show where it's like they're the toughest looking guy I've ever seen outside of their Morrissey haircut. And like
Jesus.
1,000 of that, dude. I remember I worked on a show out there that year. That's why I was there. And a bunch of guys on the crew were all into the Smiths, a bunch of Mexican guys. And I remember this dude, Wancho, who I got close with, telling me he once got pulled over in LA and these cops were like fucking with these kids. He was a teenager at the time. They had pulled over a car full of Mexican kids, and he's like, and they were really fucking with us. And he said the dude driving the car started crying and said to the cop, just like, let me take my Smith's tapes. Like, do whatever the fuck you want to do. Just can I get my Smith's tapes out of the car? And like, that was the thing. So I was like aware back then of like, man, all my friends, like a lot of the punk kids really like the Smiths. And like you said, like I was in my early 20s, like, man, like these guys are tough. These Mexican guys are tough. Who likes the Smiths?
Yeah.
Like it's not that has a reputation of being music that's like kind of like sissy-ish or dandy-ish. And certainly he's
Very.
dropping,
That's what I'd say.
it's not the Cure though. You know what I mean? And I like the Cure too, but I think that's the Cure is like put on makeup, demonstrable, like performative femininity. Like Morrissey certainly has that in him, but
Yeah, dude, he's handing out the flowers. All right, so
course,
one of the first times that I really, I mean, and this is so lame because this is like 2014, 2015. We did the goddamn comedy jam, that music comedy show that I do, and the Sklar brothers wanted to do it for the first time. They picked The Boy with a Thorn in His Side,
great
and they
song,
both
yeah.
great song. At the time, I was like, why are you picking this? But I didn't try to instruct them to do something else. And they both had these open flowing shirts. They tried to dress like Morrissey. They're handing out flowers.
Yeah.
That is just as effeminate as wearing the makeup as Robert Smith.
It is,
Without a doubt.
the thing you got to remember. So, because I'm a listen, and I want to just go on record right at the top and say Morrissey is just like an asshole, and it's just he just reveals himself more and more over the years. I still really loves the Smith stuff, a lot of his music. I don't give him my money anymore. Like he's a problematic dude who's just said a series of crazy things. So I just want to go on record that for anybody out there who's like Morrissey is a fucking nightmare, I get it. I do.
Yeah.
Like I have his name tattooed. He signed my arm and it's tattooed on my arm. And I'm like, Jesus, like just everything he says is worse.
Right.
Yeah. Dude,
we'll get to that. Oh my God. All right. We have so
and
much
one
to
of his
talk
lyrics and one of his lyrics from,
you fucking
I know it's over. So I'm one of those guys, but you gotta realize like when you get deep into the Smiths, what you gotta realize is like, they're all from Manchester in the 80s, working class town. These kids were fucking tough. Like, Johnny Marr, Andy Rourke, Mike Joyce. These were like tough kids. They were all Catholics in England in the 80s. Morrissey's parents were from Ireland. Like these were kids who were fucking like hopeless and pissed. And Morrissey, it's a really interesting case study. I think especially the way the conversation has moved in society the past 5 years or so, 5-10 years. Cause it's like, yeah, he certainly got femininity. He's throwing on flowers. He's got his like billowing shirt half open, but like, you listen to the lyrics and it's like an angry kid who clearly grew up having to fight and knowing how to fight. Like, Hand in Glove is their first single and it has the line, if they dare touch a hair on your head, I'll fight to the last breath. Like that's not the cliche when you think of the Smiths. Like, fucking Heaven Knows I'm Miserable now has the line of like, why in my life, why do I give valuable time to people who I'd much rather kick in the eye? Like there's anger at the core of it. Like he's pissed. And I think that Morrissey is both the genuine article in like embracing the fact that he's a feminine side. I also think there's a part of him that goes right back to David Bowie and the New York Dolls and this idea of like the New York Dolls, like Morrissey takes so much shit and his whole career, people going, is he gay? Is he not gay? The New York Dolls, I think people went, no, these are a bunch of Lower East Side heroin addicts and they're dressing as women to make us fucking uncomfortable because we're squares and we don't get it. And they're throwing it in our fucking face. And it's like an aggressive act that we're inflicting upon them.
Yeah.
Like we're making like tough macho homophobes question themselves because like we're Lower East Side fucking toughs who do heroin and could probably fucking kill most of the people who want to judge us, but we'll also put on high heels and fishnets. Like,
Yeah, dude, they got a blade in those fishnets. They'll
exactly.
fucking
And
slash your face.
I think the Smiths are way more from that tradition than casual people who come across their music might realize. I think he's so cartoonish and he's been so magnified in the press and has dug his own grave with so many things he says. But like Johnny Marr, I wouldn't fuck with Johnny Marr. You read about Mike Joyce and Andy Rourke and the way those guys grew up in this industrial town with like, you know, their parents struggling to survive in an era where like Margaret Thatcher was just crushing their economy.
Yeah.
Everybody's on the dole getting government assistance. And it's like, these were angry, pissed off kids from a hard place. And people forget that about the Smiths. And whatever emotion or however many Oscar Wilde references Morrissey drops in his lyrics, there's really an undercurrent of like, and this certainly had an effect on me too, growing up in North Jersey, you know, in the 80s and 90s, of just like, hey, if you're like the weird smart kid from the tough neighborhood, if you're the weird, not that masculine kid from the neighborhood, like you've got someone writing lyrics about how like you want to fucking stomp everybody into the ground and fuck you. I am smarter than you and I am more in touch with myself than you, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Like there's a very, very angry punk side to the Smiths that
Sure.
gets swallowed up.
Is all right? Because I want to get back to like to you getting back into them, because I love what you just led me on. But is that what got you into them? Because I listen. I'm a fan of your comedy. I remember I saw you do a set at the VU. God, it was a few months ago, and you were so against every other stand-up comic that was there being so real, being emotional. Which when Emily said you were a fan of this record, I was like, oh my God, yeah, that actually feels like it makes sense, because you talked about your dad. I think you talked about being a new father. Is that right?
Yeah.
It was just a heavy set.
Thanks.
And it was great. But the VU is like fucking, it's
Bring your A
Godfrey.
game.
It's like those guys that are just kidding it. Like, dude, I play around with the band and get the whole crowd singing. It's like, you know,
it's like it ties in totally. It's very cool that you connect those dots, because it is like, I am what I am. I don't have as many punchlines as the other comics in the scene, but I might tell a long story that disturbs you, and then the punchline that brings you out of it feels like such pressure relief that it fucking gets an applause break on my way out the door. And that's hard to translate to video or to TV, but I think a lot of the comics around New York have had my back and been like, no, that guy does his own thing and it's not what we do, but it's special. Now, there's also been some comics that have talked a lot of shit about me, and you know, made fun of me for my style, and I just have to sit there and go, I'm not gonna fucking adjust what I do or who I am based on other people's opinions. And a lot of that goes back to being a punk kid, and a lot of that connection with the Smiths is like, dude, like if someone could write Johnny Marr's guitar parts today, people would be like, this is ahead of its time. And he was writing this shit in 1982. Like Morrissey is so weird. And I think so much of what makes this band work for so many people is that those two found each other and went, we're very different people, but we're going to box out space for the other to have some oxygen to do what you need to do, say what you need to say. And yeah, I think a lot of my comedy, I'm just like, yeah, it's wildly different, but I come from the alt scene. I'm much more of a storyteller. My shit takes a long time, but I'm very proud that I got past at the cellar. And generally, not every time, there's certainly times where I eat shit, but I'm like, I'm able to go up in between in between Dan Soder and Godfrey and these guys who can just fucking wreck shop and have these crisp punchlines. And I think that generally I have a lot of people's respect, because it's like, oh, and then you're going to go up and tell 14-minute long story as your whole set in between guys where the rhythm is not built for that. Like a lot of that is a lot of the art I loved growing up, starting with the music I loved growing up, was not stuff that was going to be on the radio or MTV, because it didn't make any sense there. So I take a lot of strength in that. That's kind of me as well.
You said punk. Like what was it? Like, are you talking like hardcore Bad Brains and Minor Threat, or you know, like tell me about
Minor Threat.
The Smiths.
Yes.
You love Minor Threat? Yeah.
Absolutely. Minor Threat was a big one for me. I still listen to their discography all the time. I listen to Minor Threat and I listen to the Smiths, and to me, those occupy a very similar brain space. It was, J Church and Jawbreaker. It was a lot of the pop punk stuff, which is not surprising. Like back in the day, you know, Mr. T Experience, Screeching Weasel, and then some weirdo bands. There was this band on Lookout Records called Servotron that used to dress up as robots and play. I was like, absolutely.
I
There's
might
this
have
guy.
heard of them. I had a buddy, Paul Bettany, that was really into the hardcore scene and really opened up my eyes to what
Paul
punk
Bettany, who
was.
plays the Vision, or a different Paul Bettany?
No, oh no, different one. Bettinson.
Okay.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Paul Bettinson. Yeah, but I just got
I was gonna
caught
say,
up,
you're
man.
friends with the fucking Avengers.
Yeah, you know, he's a good buddy. It's me, him, Jennifer Connelly. We talk, we do Zooms. It's great. No, but he opened me up.
There was
And
this guy, he was huge for me in high school, called Atom and His Package. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy. He spells it
mm-mm.
ATOM, like atomic. And he was this dude from Philly. And he was one of the first guys, like a lot of like that nerdcore rap. This guy was a punk version of that before he inspired a lot of them. Like he is a dude with a guitar, and then he programmed the rest of his music electronically. He'd have songs about like, why doesn't every hockey team have a goalie that's morbidly obese to block every shot? And he had this great song called Punk Rock Academy that was all about like, we need to just start a high school just for all the fucking freaky punk kids and we'll just all go there and not get beat up. And
Yeah.
total weirdo art stuff, you know? And then, you know, a lot of the hip hop, being born in 1980, it was a lot of punk rock, a lot of hip hop, and the hip hop I gravitated to as well was like Cool Keith, Dr. Octagon, like real weirdos, like
Deltron, the guys, the Dan the Automator, it's all this stuff that, you know, was against the mainstream. Have you always been like that? Because it's now that now it all starting to make sense. Even when now with your stand up, it's like, okay, well, this is, if Dane Cook's doing this, I'm gonna go fucking all the way over here.
Yeah.
And if this is if everybody loves Pearl Jam, Man or Astroman is really enticing me a
Man
lot
or
more.
Astroman, perfect example. There's another band that I love. You want to do a fucking space themed surf rock instrumental band? I'm all about it. You know, I always gravitated towards stuff that definitely lived on the fringe. It helped me survive as like a weird nerdy kid whose last name spells out Gethard, who went to a fucking public school in North Jersey through the 80s and 90s. Like
I needed think about that.
needed to find my fucking crew, and it turned out my crew was like the kind of people on the edges of society.
Yeah.
And it's why to this day it's like I'm always going to do my own thing with comedy. And if you know, a lot of people have embraced that, a lot of people show me respect for it, and the people who want to talk shit, I take a step back. It's probably a good sign.
Yeah,
because if you're doing the mainstream stuff that everybody else is doing, and you feel so threatened by what I'm doing that you got to call me names for it on a podcast, like that's probably a good sign that I'm standing my ground and I'm sticking to my guns and I'm doing my shit. You know,
I say this to everybody. It's the best advice anybody's ever given me in comedy. Whatever you are, lean the fuck into that. Just lean into who you are, because it'll set you apart. There can only be one you. There can only be one Chris. There can only be one Josh. There can only be one this, you know, Man or Astroman. If you just do whatever you are, and you'll find your fan base, especially now. Like it's even easier now. I mean, and you were lucky enough to create all these things to find a way to get out there. But it's, you know, with music, I find it's like the bands that really do find an individuality and can separate are the ones we talk about. That's why we talk about Kanye more than anybody in hip hop. And it's not just his self-promotion, but he's doing what Kanye wants to do and constantly changing. And Radiohead and fucking, you know, the Beatles and Pink Floyd, they did something completely different.
100%. I'm very happy to be like, if I make a little less money than some of the mainstream people, but I'm doing stuff that I really am proud of and I stand by, I would take that 10 times out of 10 over being like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of Bill Burr. You know what I mean? And no offense, there's a lot of that out there. We all know.
Yes, of course.
A lot of that out there. So if I make a little bit less money doing stuff that I like on my deathbed will look at and be like, I stand by all of it, totally okay with that.
So would you call the Smiths the fringe then? Because if you're listening to all these, like, you know, like, dude, you're literally all the Man or Astroman, that's Paul Bettany. He turned me on to them. He turned me on to like Korn. And I remember we went to go see one of my first concerts ever solo without like a family member or a friend's dad. Because the first concert that I saw kind of solo, but my friend's dad was there, but in different seats, was Bruce Springsteen in 1992. And my buddy just showed me the ticket stub to it. like literally an hour ago, but we went to go see Korn, Korn, but they were opening for Orange 9mm. And
Okay.
Paul wanted to see Orange 9mm,
Yeah.
and me wanted to hear, fucking like
Uh-huh.
I wanted
Uh-huh.
that. And it was incredible. And I remember he was just like, yeah, Corn, whatever, but Orange 9mm, they fucking rule. And it's like, so how did you find, and do you think the Smiths just fit into that category? Because right now the people that love them, and I'm pretty sure they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They've gotten their due.
I don't think they are. Not yet.
Edgar, can you check that?
I
Can you check to
wonder
see
if I
if
think Morrissey might be too big an asshole for them to get inducted. I think they don't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole for a while, is my
I could, but
guess.
no, but I could see them, dude. Like I could still see them
They
voting him in, just
I
not
think they
showing
should
up.
be. They should be. I mean, they put out, they were only around for 5 years and they put out 4 albums and 2 singles collections. And there's very few songs that miss. Like their discography is like beefed up. It's on steroids. It's good shit.
Oh, well, this is our third record. Let me look up because I have the list of the ones we've done. We did Louder Than Bombs.
Uh-huh.
We've done, of course, Meat is Murder. And I'm pretty sure we did The Smiths.
The first one, you haven't done The Queen is Dead yet.
Not yet. That's coming up. So the Smiths Rock remains to be seen whether a band such as the Smiths can be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Cure was among the 2012 nominees, but Robert Smith's immensely popular band was not inducted that year. It was not made the ballot since then. I know the Cure are in there. I know that because I watched video of that. The Smiths, wow, they haven't been inducted. That's mind blowing.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. But again, I think they were kind of a fringe band in their time, especially in the States. They were much bigger in England. But there's been a few waves where like what will happen is a lot of bands will come up and these bands will get immensely popular and then they'll all start to reveal that they grew up on, like when the Killers got huge, there was a big renaissance of Smiths fans because the Killers in all their interviews were like, yeah, the Smiths, when the Decemberists got really big.
I remember
Malloy,
the Dismemberists, yeah.
Yeah, he put out a cover album of like 5 or 6 Morrissey songs, and it was just like, oh, every few years you realize that the musicians doing the coolest stuff grew up idolizing the Smiths.
I think the song that I first heard that made me feel like, oh wow, I think I dig this band is must shut your eyes, don't shut your eyes. I am you. I don't know. What's it called? How Soon Is Now?
How Soon Is Now? Yeah, that's because that one's busted out in a big way a couple of times. It was the cover version of it was the theme song for that show, Charmed.
Yes,
that song's great. How Soon Is Now? The fact that that's kind of their most well-known song plays into some of the people who roll their eyes at them, because it's definitely one of the more emotional sad sack songs.
Sure.
But I do still like it. And that song, if you ever see him play live, that song is crazy live.
Why is it crazy? What did they
set up a giant fucking gong on the stage, and there's just a dude pounding this gong by the end, so that when that song gets loud and goes big, it's just the whole room is just filled with just like boom, 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 like this giant bass drum and gong, and like this real tribal feel to it, and that just can't get across in a record. That song live, I was very tired of that song, and then I saw him play it live, and I was just like, oh right, this song just like punches you in the face. I forgot.
I think the song though that really on this journey, because like I said, when we were getting ready to do the first Smiths record on the podcast, I wasn't looking forward to it, but I was looking forward to it. I was like, I'm very open to music. So even if when I was younger, I was like, this is lame. As I've gotten older, I'm like, well, there's got to be a reason so many people love this band. And if I sit with the record long enough, I'm going to get it. And the first song that really got me was This Charming Man. I was like, wow, it's like, this is really good. And I mean, forgetting about all the the subtext about what the song could or is about, and I think there was some interesting shit too, because it was really like reading the lyrics and reading the stories that he's pulling from, and like you had said, like Oscar Wilde shit and this, that, and that stuff. But it was like I started noticing like it's so unique. Like you mentioned, Johnny's guitar playing, Morrissey's voice, which I used to make fun of, it was attracting me towards it. It was
Yeah.
so I couldn't believe it, that I hadn't accepted this band earlier. And then it's just grown and grown and grown. And as we've done all that, we did I think one of the compilations of the next one, and now we're on this
Yeah.
one.
Louder Than Bombs is the
Is the
compliment.
comp?
Do you know the story about the opening guitar riff from This Charming Man?
No, tell me everything, because I've got
Dude,
facts, but I'd rather hear it from you.
there's this amazing clip from one of the Gallagher brothers from Oasis, because they grew up on the Smiths, and he became close with Johnny Marr as he became established, and Johnny Marr would let him borrow guitars and record off of guitars that Smith's songs were recorded with, and all this crazy stuff. And he said he got close enough to him. So apparently, I'm not a guitar player, but apparently that opening riff of This Charming Man, which just goes like apparently that's like impossible. Apparently what Johnny Marr pulls off there is technically extraordinary. And he's like a god to guitar nerds. I've always known this. Even friends of mine, I have friends who don't necessarily like the Smiths, but if they're guitar players, they're like, I still listen to the Smiths because Johnny Marr is doing the weirdest, hardest shit. And he was a kid. He was like teenager, early 20s. So the guy from Oasis apparently went up to him and said, like, me and all my guitar friends, we all have our own version of that, but we can't get it totally right. Like, no one can figure it out. Can you show me how? And supposedly Johnny Marr looked back at him and was like, I can't play it anymore. Like, I'm not as good as I was when I was like 20 years old, and all I did was just, and I think he's also on record, like he used to take like amphetamines back in the day and just stay up all night and just like rip shit on his guitar. So he's like, even I am not like a 21-year-old Johnny Marr. And there's this great quote where it cuts back to the Gallagher. I forget if it's Liam Gallagher or Noel, but it just cuts to him and he's like, and I'm like, fuck, even fucking Johnny Marr's not as good as Johnny Marr.
That's so great. It's music that they are their own band.
Yeah.
There's no one like them, and you can see why there's so many imitators, because once you mention Oasis, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Radiohead, hugely inspired by the Smiths.
Oh my God, yeah. I want to get back to that beginning, because you hear them in the punk thing, you hear them in the covers, and then how do you suddenly have a tattoo on your arm twice?
So yeah, I mean, the basic bullet points are, I had a friend a year older than me, and he was one of my friends in the punk scene. And I said to him, I was like, I think he liked the Smiths. I think he mentioned that he liked the Smiths in a class one day in school. And I was like, dude, I keep hearing covers by them. And he was like, oh, just get singles. And that's their, after they broke up, a collection of all the singles they put out. And I'll never forget, I was dating a girl senior year of high school, and I live in Jersey. Her family spent the summers in Cape Cod. They had like a little like rundown house that had been in their family for a while. And she invited me up, and it was like the first road trip I ever took on my own. Once I had my license as a kid, I borrowed my mom's car and I drove, and I just listened to that Smith singles on a loop over and over again, all the way up that 4-hour drive and all the way back. And I was just like, man, this is it. So yeah. And then from there, it was just, because the thing about the Smiths is there's not that much of it. It's easy to be a completist because there's only 4 albums and a couple singles collections. Even the singles collections have some shared tracks. So it's real easy to dive in deep on the Smiths. And it just got me from there in high school. And then, being, like I mentioned, being Gethard, being in a public school in North Jersey where like you kind of had to fucking watch out, going to college, getting real depressed. It was just music that I always leaned on. And it clicked young and early through like the punk avenues and connections. And then just over and over again in my life, I found that there were stretches where I'd be like having a tough time or trying to figure out my next move, and Smiths would come on shuffle, and it would be like, oh, this is a song I was never even huge into. This is generally when I would skip, but it came up on shuffle, and I just stopped and was like, oh, now that's speaking to me now. Like the songs I liked when I was 14, I still have fondness for them, but then I'm like 28 and I'm trying to figure out like a career failing. And then some other song comes on and I go, oh, I never got this one.
Yeah.
They were writing this guy's lyrics. It's pretty profound now. He was able to sum up not just where he was at in life, but like he kind of knew a lot about humanity from a young age, because there was stuff that I didn't get, and it kind of still happens. There's still songs that come on where I go, oh, that one's hitting me now as a dad, or that
Mhm.
one's hitting me now as someone who's maybe like past my peak career wise. That one's hitting me as someone who's insecure about having to pay a mortgage. Like I never even considered those things when I was 15, 16 years old. So it's just really profound how that happens.
How has
And
it influenced? How has it influenced your comedy? Do you? Because I'm like I said, you do these 14-minute like stories. They're emotional. Do you think if you've never heard the Smiths, you'd be the kind of comic that you are right now?
no, no way, no way. I mean, my HBO special, I quote the Smiths lyrics, I think 3 or 4 times throughout the special. Um, and I was made fun of for that by comedians, which I got, and I can take it. If you want to give me shit, I get it. But yeah, I mean, I think my the Smiths in a way are like, they're not a punk band, but they are also in a way like the smartest apex of what punk can be. You know what I mean? They don't sound like a punk band, but it's because they're better musicians and probably smarter than a lot of what punk usually gets boiled down to. So I think a lot of my background as a punk, and especially the Smiths, like I just, for better or worse, sometimes it's been to my detriment, but more often to my positive, like more often a positive. I feel like I can walk into any comedy room and I can at least survive, because the
Mhm.
room doesn't need to culturally fit me, because I don't think I culturally fit anywhere. So I better learn how to do what I do in South Brooklyn, where everybody's, subscribes to the New Yorker. I better be able to go up to Stand Up New York, where it's going to be all like German tourists who were told Tina Fey was going to be there. My material better work at Caroline's. It better work in North Brooklyn, where like every single person in the room is like in a band and on Molly while watching me.
Yeah.
And then, to come from the background I started as a UCB guy. I started as an improv guy. The fact that I'm passed at the Cellar and can go up there and I'm welcomed with open arms, I'm like, I don't know that I would have had that versatility if not for the Smiths, because I don't fit in anywhere. And because of that, I have figured out how to fit in everywhere. And I think that is very much something that the Smiths also occupied in their time in music. And I think I was definitely chasing that a little bit as an artist. I think, as like you were saying before, you got to lean into yourself.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's, for me, that's been kind of a scary process throughout my career, because I go, when I lean into myself, I often land someplace that is
What you thought
not
it was gonna
not
be? Yeah.
it's not lucrative, it's not
Yeah.
popular, it's not,
Yeah.
and then but I keep finding ways to not only survive, but at times I've actually thrived on it. And it's a little bit lonely at times, and it often feels like I can't catch long-term momentum. But I just think that the music I grew up on, and the Smiths are the number one example of this. It was just, you send it out into the world, and if people actually find it and respond to it, well, guess what? Now there's a community of fucking freaks who have each other's back, and that's way more honest, and in some ways makes you way more bulletproof than trying to figure out how to mimic the flavor of the month. So yeah, I think it totally is informed me as an artist. And
When
sometimes I'm mad about that, but more often than not, I recognize it as a big positive.
No, it's a positive. When did you find that community? When did you think you really found that community?
Some of it was those early days. I started at UCB in 2000. So I started there when it was truly underground. And I walked in there, and that was the first time I realized that comedy could feel like music. That was
Yeah.
the first time I was like, oh, like I was never a musician, but I felt really comfortable going to like an Elks Lodge in Boonton, New Jersey, and standing in the back of the room while a bunch of bands played.
Yeah.
And it was never, I was never going to be a musician, but I could feel, okay, like everybody's letting their guard down here in a way that doesn't happen at school. That doesn't happen when I've tried to sign up for, like, I loved basketball as a kid. I love, but I'm like, could play bad in the basketball team. It doesn't feel, I don't feel like I can let my guard down. Music was that. So UCB, I sensed it. And then the real truth is the bullet points of my career, at a certain point, I had kind of outgrown UCB and it was heading in a more corporate direction and it was feeling very stiff. And I think a lot of the people who roll their eyes at it, I was feeling it grow into that while I was there. And I was doing like a talk show there that I wound up taking to public access TV. Now I had been the lead on a sitcom in 2010. I had booked the lead on this show that was produced by Will Ferrell and Adam McKay.
What was it? What was it
It was,
called?
it was called Big Lake. It was Comedy Central's first sitcom. It was 10 episodes and it bombed. It bombed so
I
hard.
haven't even heard of it.
Yeah, dude. And it was me and Horatio Sands and Chris Parnell from SNL, like
Oh fuck.
produced by Will Ferrell. Like it was supposed to be big. It had all this press and then it bombed. And I took the reviews, tore me up. And my agents at the time were like, well, now it's time to move to LA. Cause like, even though that didn't go well, like you're in the conversation now. So pilot season, you're going to get a look from everybody now. And I was just like, nope, I didn't like that. It didn't speak to me. So I went and actually signed up for a public access show in New York, which was horrifically embarrassing in some ways to have been the lead of a sitcom. And now I'm hosting a public access show. But that show I wound up doing on public access for 5 or 6 years. And just all these kids would call and come out of the woodwork. And then eventually we got picked up for cable with that show. And I did 3 seasons hosting that. So that again goes right back to the Smiths, goes right back to punk rock of just like, I don't want to do it your way. Like I just tried to do it your way. And I'm like reading what a shitty job I did in like national publications. I'm like reading shit that's like shitting. I'm like, and there's a whole story there. Like I replaced the lead on like a less than a month's notice. Like it was a real shit show, but I was the public face of it. I was the lead. So I'm like, I don't know. I just tried to do it the mainstream way. And all that happened was like my mom is reading what a bad job I did in newspapers and like asking me if I'm okay. I think I need to go do it my way. And for me, the only way I was going to have a show that reflected what I wanted was on public access. And that show was just complete fucking chaos and insanity. And then we'd have a phone call from someone that got really emotional and I could just abandon whatever idea we had that night and just talk to some kid on the phone for 15 minutes because it's public access. Who cares? And I think that's when people first started to realize like, oh, this dude is like not bluffing. Like he's strange and he's willing to kind of fall on his sword in the service of that. And that was the really empowering thing in my life was I think maybe like UCB lit the spark, but I came to sense that it was never going to totally be mine because that was its own system. And I went off and did public access TV and then that launched everything else.
Yeah, dude. All right, we got to talk about this record.
Yeah.
We got to talk about Meat is Murder.
Yeah.
Right, you are a super fan. Let's start with what question do I want to ask first? Do I want to ask rankings? All right, well, here, let's do this one. What sets Meat is Murder apart from the rest of the band's albums? Like you said, there's not many. And I've only known, like I said, I know the compilation, I know Louder Than Bombs, I know this. I still haven't listened to the other ones. I might have heard tracks off of them. So I don't know if I can really give an opinion, but you can. So what do you think is this different? Because I really don't hear the differences. It feels like it's still the Smiths.
Yeah. I think it's this. I think The Queen is Dead is their best album. That's the one after this. I also think Strange Ways, Here We Come, their last album, I think that's a better album. I think start to finish, those are better albums. I think the first album is good and weird, but it's the singles off those albums that got everybody excited. I think for most Smiths fans, it's like Hand in Glove, This Charming Man, those tracks stand out. But are people really flipping out about Reel Around the Fountain, like a 7-minute long slow song? They are now as fans looking back on it. But in that moment, the first album felt like this band has an insane amount of potential, and the singles they're dropping are fucking hot.
Yeah.
So I think the reason I love Meat is Murder is it's the bridge from them figuring out who they were to having figured out who they were, if that makes sense. The first one I think you can audibly hear. This is a band figuring out who they are, and who they are is very different, and it's exciting. The Queen is Dead, you're like, oh, this is pretty perfect start to finish. This is like a distilled, this band figured out who they are and distilled it down to something, and there's no fat on the bones of this record. Meat is Murder is not either of those. It's kind of a stepchild. But I think in the course of doing that, it's in some ways, it's got some of my favorite Smith songs because it's got some of the stuff that they hadn't grown out of yet that I really love.
Mm-hmm. What is that? What do you mean? Like they haven't grown out of?
So like for example, I listen to I Want the One I Can't Have, and I go, that to me is like, that's the fact that they, this was the early 80s. Punk coming out of England was still a fucking thing. That song is just a ripping fucking punk song done really well by musicians who are great. And it doesn't totally sound like punk, but you can hear it more. I'm like, Queen is Dead. I think they had sort of grown out of that. What She Said, the fact that those two songs are back to back, like I Want the One I Can't Have and What She Said, those songs are just like like fast, loud, angry. Like they were still kind of getting some of the punk side out of their system.
Yeah.
And I really love that. I really love that. And they did it so well. So I have such fondness for that sort of like they had kind of emerged from the ooze, but they hadn't totally evolved into humans yet. If that makes sense. That analogy makes sense.
Yeah. They still got the, like, they're not tadpoles. They're just a step above that, but they're walking, and the gills aren't useful anymore, and they're breathing oxygen.
And like when you listen to Queen is Dead all the way through someday, you're going to see like, oh, whoa. Like
I'm going to do it today. I'm going to do it today.
It's like, oh, this is just, I mean, it has start to finish. It doesn't miss. And then it also has There Is a Light That Never Goes Out, which is one of the most beautiful, romantic, heartbreaking songs ever written. And like that song has weird fits. Like Andre 3000 from Outkast there's a quote from him that's like, if I could write one song as good as There Is a Light That Never Goes Out by the Smiths, I'd retire. Like there's people who listen to that song who are like, that's a perfect song. So this album doesn't have that, but it has this weird mix of like, this band has now found their confidence in a big way. And it still has some of the vestiges of how they grew up that they haven't totally shed yet. And I think that makes it real fucking cool.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things about this album that are real nerdy specifics that I love.
What is it? Like, what is that? What is the nerdy specifics?
My favorite thing maybe about this entire album is the first line of this song is so fucking spiteful and petty and funny. The fact that the first line of the first track is belligerent ghouls run Manchester schools. I fucking love that, because you got to understand, like, the singles off that first album hit really big. And there were some BBC DJs that were really supporting them, like John Peel, really supporting the Smiths, letting everybody know. And the album, people were excited by, but like I said, it was more the singles. So now it's that thing. Every band has a second album, right?
Mm-hmm. Usually
and
we all know. Yeah, it's usually a low.
We all know. Sometimes that's when your fans go, maybe you guys were one hit wonder, maybe you're hot for a minute. So in my mind, I'm going, they know that people are going to turn on this album and they're going to hear the first track. And maybe if they think it's fucking garbage or dog shit, they're going to turn it off before the first album's done. What's the number one message we want to send so that even if they turn it off halfway through the first track, the one thing we want to get across, fuck the Manchester school system, fuck our teachers, fuck our administrators, fuck all those people involved in our school experience. School fucking sucks. Manchester school in particular is fucking dog shit. And these fucking guys who wore their dumb fucking suits and made our life hell in gym class can go fucking fuck themselves. Like
Yeah.
that's straight up the message that they were like, okay, if they don't hear anything else, what do we want to know? It's literally like if I was like, fuck Mr. Sisbaro from my 7th grade math class. Like that, it would be that spiteful and petty, you know? And they had the table was set where they knew people are going to pay attention to this. So if we only get one shot to fire, what's the shot to fire? Fuck
Yeah.
school. Fuck our personal high schools. Fuck them. Like, I think that's so fucking funny and cool, man. I think that's just, I actually think a lot in comedy. I've been thinking a lot lately about, because I do think a little differently than other people. I sometimes think about like when I'm writing a full hour, what are the best first lines in music? And I have songs where I go, man, that first line of that song gets you off your fucking out of your chair and makes you want to fucking put your fist through a window or makes you want to run to the dance floor. And I think about that sometimes of like this album has one of the most perfect first lines. Just belligerent ghouls run Manchester schools. Can you imagine? Like they're like in their early 20s at this point. I think Morrissey's 23, 24. Johnny Marr's even a little younger. Like they're not that far out from having graduated from Manchester schools.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you're 15 or you're 16 and this band comes out of your fucking neighborhood and you're like, man, the Smiths were fucking killing it. They're not just a Manchester band. They went national. People are paying attention to them in America.
Yeah.
Everybody was listening to this charming man. What are they going to say? And you're 15 and you get out of some school in Manchester and you run to the record store and you're like, I heard the Smiths put out their new album and that's our guys. They're from here. What is it going to be? And you drop the fucking needle on the turntable and the first thing they say is, fuck Manchester schools. Kids must have gone back to Manchester schools that next day. And when teachers were like, take out your books, they must have been like, no,
like, fuck yeah.
Fuck you. We're not doing anything you say.
Fuck you. Fuck right. The superintendent. Fuck everything, all y'all man. Motherfuckers. Yeah. It's like,
I love that.
It's like that Tupac song where he's like, fuck the A&R. Fuck everybody that works at this one fucking record label. And you're like, everybody? Like, dude, even the fucking interns? Fuck all of them.
I think that line of fucking Headmaster Ritual, first line, first song is up there with like Notorious B.I.G. This one is dedicated to everybody who thought I'd never amount to nothing. I think it's that angry and pointed. And I think, and from what I've read, like there are specific teachers this was aimed at. And Morrissey knew that they would hear it and they did hear it. And he made a point of using all the momentum of his career to just say, like, before I get to anything else, fuck those dickheads. Fuck the shitheads in my gym class. Fuck the teachers who laughed when the bullies fucking put bruises on me. Fuck the superintendent in his dumb suit. Fuck them all, man. And he made sure they heard it.
Yeah.
And I just think I think about that a lot of like being a guy who is going to basement punk shows and that being a big part of me feeling like I could even try to be an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about, man, every young kid from Manchester, probably every young kid in England and a lot of kids otherwise, but specifically there's like kids who went to the schools he went to who he fucking rearranged their DNA with that line. They never respected authority again. They never fucking put up with bullshit from some dickhead teacher ever again. And I love it. I love it. Wow. I love it. I miss that Morrissey, man. When he says all the crazy shit he says now, I miss that guy who's like, I'm going to use my fucking success to make every kid who felt like I did 8 years ago feel much more comfortable drawing the line and calling out bullshit. I miss that guy so much.
You keep mentioning, and I just don't know, like, what is all this crazy shit that he's done? Because all I know is they you said they have a short career. They hate each other now.
Yeah.
And like they've been offered millions upon millions of dollars and they won't get back together. And you're like,
they've sued each other. Yeah. Like, he always had a reputation for being a dickhead. I think for American fans, it was harder for us to sort out. So much of it is like tangled up in like British classist politics, but like he's put out a couple songs that people have said are racist.
Really?
He put out one song as a solo artist called Bengali and Platforms, where the chorus is "Life is hard enough here when you belong here," or "Life is hard enough when you belong here," saying like, people are like, "Are you saying that like
Yeah.
like Bengali people and Indian people don't belong, like they can't move to England?" And he was like, "No, it's I'm trying to champion the underdog voice." But then just keeps coming out. He's worn a bunch of like alt-right pins on late night show appearances, and he's flown the Union Jack, which again, I'm not totally up on British politics, but I've understood that that's like it draws a certain line politically. And um, the thing that got me was when Kevin Spacey got, outed for abusing people. He
Hmm.
basically went on record and was like, "Well, why were those kids' parents leaving them alone with Kevin Spacey?" And it's like, dude, it's not the time or place to like blame a kid who got abused by an actor. And why are you even talking about this? And
Yeah.
it's like, whatever your politics are, it's like he was for so long the champion for people who felt shitted on, people who felt beat up, a lot of queer kids, a lot of people who felt like he was their voice. So
Goth, yeah, the God that
yeah,
I mean, the first episode I did with Christina Pajitsky, who's arguably one of the biggest podcasters in the game now with Tom Segura, and I mean, she was a goth, different kid,
yeah,
an immigrant from Poland, I think, or yeah, but basically Eastern Europe. Had to flee, and like she felt solid and comfort in their music. Uh,
yeah. So it's really, it's like, whatever your politics are, I'm so tired of fighting with everybody about politics. But what I will say is like, his fan base is one that, the fact that he leans right and that he says things that seem to indicate that he doesn't like the fact that he has a huge Mexican fan base, but then will say things like immigrants are ruining England and what it means to be English. It's like,
mhm.
how do you have a huge fan base from the country that's maybe taking it on the chin hardest in terms of immigration policies, and then have political views that seem to stand totally against the people who have supported you? It's just
Yeah.
very contradictory and often feels hypocritical. And like I said, when he was like, "Those kids shouldn't have been alone with Kevin Spacey," I was just like, this is not what I'm looking for from a pop
Yeah,
musician.
come on,
This is
man.
just not what I'm looking for,
Just throw your flowers, bro. God, that
Yeah.
sucks. Yeah, I went to go see Eric Clapton a couple nights ago. I'm not a huge Clapton fan, but I was like, oh, I want to go. And my buddy, I put up a post. I use Facebook and Twitter for the reason you're supposed to use them, by going like, hey everybody, I'm looking for a good chicken parmesan sandwich
Yeah.
in New Jersey. Any recommendations? And then people put it up there, and I get made fun of by Big J and Soder and all those guys for doing that. But I do it with concerts sometimes. I go to concerts all the time. I had off on Sunday, and I was like, should I go see Eric Clapton? And one of my best friends, Greg Chait, reached out. And he goes, I would never give that guy any of my money. And I'm like, why? Just the anti-vax shit? And he's like, no. And he goes back. He's an anti-Semite. He was much like Morrissey said. He said something at a concert that was like about like, are there any immigrants here? And they were like, yeah. And he was like, well, I don't want you here. Like, I want to keep England white. I had no idea. But
Yeah.
but this is the thing. The industry still gave him Record of the Year, Album of the Year, all of these awards in 1994 when he wrote Tears in Heaven. So it's like, do you find that you can, with Morrissey, there's no line that he can step over that'll make you say, I can't listen to this music anymore? Is you can remove fully the art from the artist?
I I will say, I sadly listened, like when I found out we were doing this, I was psyched because I was like, "Oh, I would love to sit down and just listen to Meet His Murder again and not think about any of that shit." Like, I have a
Yeah.
reason to listen to it and not have to think about it. Like, I'm basically at a point where I'm like, I just don't want to give the guy any more of my money. I don't want to be like, like I said, I quoted him multiple times on an HBO special. I'm like, I don't think I'll do that again. Like, because when it's like, when you do that, you are implicitly also
Yeah,
getting on
you're
board with the full character of what this
mhm.
person's putting out there. And if he wants to put out all this stuff that gets into like commentary on sex abuse victims and commentary on, what it means to be English in relation to immigration, I'm just going like, I don't like what he's saying, and it's not why I turn on your band. And in fact, it's almost doubly heartbreaking because I'm like, and I certainly think artists have a right to speak, but I'm like, the reason I got into this music was actually because I felt like such an outcast.
Yeah,
I felt like
yeah,
such an outlier. And I thought you were the guy sticking up for the outcasts. And I think a lot of the people you're shitting on feel to me like the modern outcasts. And I want
yeah.
also, not that I'm a huge deal, but as an artist who's done stuff at a certain level, I kind of feel like I got to draw a line so that any of the outcasts who might have found me
Sure.
go, they know, well, I still got your back. I'm not as big a deal as I was when I had a TV show a few years back, but like, I want people to know you come to see me. I want you to know I got your back. And this guy's making it clear he doesn't have everybody's back. So I got to
Yeah.
just separate, and I can't put, I can still listen to the music. Can't put any more money in his pocket. Can't do it.
Let's talk about when you put money in his pocket, because I want to know about the Morrissey tattoo. You mentioned it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've probably seen them live. Well, you haven't seen the Smiths, but
No,
you've
I missed the
seen.
Smiths. I was too young. I've seen Morrissey live, I think 14 times, something like that.
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, I've jumped on stage and grabbed his hand before the bouncer fucking took me out. Like, that's the thing.
Really?
Dude, I'm telling you, you would love to see one of his shows. It's like I
I'll
just
go.
said, don't give money, but you should go just as a social experiment.
Oh, I'm at the
Dude,
place now, Chris, where any band I go to shows. If I don't have a stand up show, I live in New York now. I go to a concert. I'm working in comedy and music the way that I do. I know a lot of people. A lot of times I don't have to pay, but sometimes I'll pay. I paid for Clapton because I was like, it's Clapton. I want to
it's
go
a
see him
legend.
before it's a legend.
Yeah.
It was the most boring show I've ever been to. Like I wanted some fucking racism. I wanted some anti-vax because if either do that or play long like lay down Sally. One of those. If you didn't even play, you didn't do any of that. But all these artists that even if I'm a passing fan, like
Yeah.
barely, if they're legends, I'm going to see them because I want to say I saw the Rolling Stones. I want to say I'll always regret. I talk about this all the time on the podcast. I'm a huge Neil Diamond fan. And not just for the irony of it being like a rocker
Yeah.
that loves Neil Diamond. I just think he's so great. And then I didn't have money when he was touring. And then when I got money, he got Parkinson's and he stopped touring. And now I'm like, I regret that. So anybody, Roger Waters, I went to go see Roger Waters. I hate Roger Waters. I'm a Dave Gilmour fan, but I'm gonna fucking go because
Yeah.
you have to.
My wife is a musician herself, and she was like, we got to see the legends before they die. So we've seen before the pandemic. I mean, we have a kid, so we were real careful in the pandemic, but I mean,
Sure.
like, we saw Springsteen on Broadway, spent too much on that. Saw Tom Petty before he passed, Bob Dylan,
Wow.
went to Paul Simon's last show at MSG. Like, these are all people that I have varying degrees of love for, but I'm glad that I got them under the belt. I'm glad I can say that I saw them, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
I'll go see Morrissey.
Dude,
If I
I was gonna say you've gotten to see Corn. You know what I mean? You've seen Orange 9mm, and I'm telling you, tell me if I'm wrong. You will never. The pit during the encore of a Morrissey show will feel just as dangerous as anything that
really.
happened at those. People lose their fucking minds. He'll take his shirt off and throw it in the crowd. People will start fist fighting to try to grab the shirt, get a piece of. People are stepping. Dude, I saw him at the Wellmont, Montclair, New Jersey, and a friend of mine elbowed a dude out of the way in front of him and then leaned down so I could run up his back and jump over a bouncer to get on stage. People get mentally ill at the end of Morrissey shows. And all of a sudden, that's when you turn around and you're like, oh, right. All of a sudden it feels like there's like group of people where you're like, oh, there's like freaks and poetry fans and intellectuals and your college professor. And then the encore, you're like, and now it just feels like the skinheads and the gangbangers. And people go ape shit. If you're up front at a Morrissey show during the encore,
You're gonna get
that's when you
kicked.
realize that the Smiths were a lot tougher. The subtext of the Smiths is not it's like they wear their emotions on their sleeve, and it's flowery and it's heartfelt and it's poetic. But the subtext of what makes them great is they are fucking pissed at what the world was like for them as kids. They're pissed. They're kids of Catholic immigrants in 1980s England when there was no fucking money and no jobs for anybody, and they had to watch their parents eat shit, and they ate shit, and kids were brutal to them, and they're pissed. And
Hmm.
that all comes out at the encore of a Morrissey show. You got
Oh,
to
I'm in. I'm
fucking be
in.
smart and watch out and be ready because it erupts. And he
I'm
always plays a
in.
crowd favorite. He always plays either a Smith song or like a real early era solo song
Yeah.
because he knows the crowd wants to go ape shit and he just gives them the excuse. That's when he'll bust out This Charming Man or fucking How Soon Is Now. He
Oh,
waits.
I'm in. All right. I'm gonna as soon as we get off this, I'm gonna look up his tour schedule and I'm fucking going. I'm going. I'm going.
I'm now convincing myself to go and spend money
No, come
now.
on,
I'm
dude.
convincing
If it's
myself.
in this area, if it is in this
Dude, let
area,
me, I would
I
go with
will
you.
let. Yes,
Let me know.
100%. I'll get the tickets. I'll know somebody to know somebody, and I'll get us the tickets. I want to know. You met him, obviously, right?
Yeah. So he played Fallon and I have friends. This was when Fallon had the old Conan slap. Um, and I had friends who worked there. And I actually, weird footnote in history, when they do the test shows, when a new
Hmm.
talk show host gets the job so they can figure out how to run a talk show. And I was the first person he interviewed as on one of his or not the first, but I was one of the test show interviews. And
Yeah.
they always said that I was like able to get him comfortable. They were like, yeah, you were the first person that he was like able to totally chill out with because I was just such a good, a lot of people knew me as a storyteller around town then. And a
Hmm.
lot of the people on the staff were like, you should get Gethard in because he can just shoot the shit with people. And so I had a lot of friends who worked there. And I was like, Morrissey's playing. Can I get backstage? And they got me seats in the house. And I was like, that's cool, but it's like my only chance to meet him. And right when he was done playing, one of the producers kind of just like, I saw this one producer kept turning around and looking at me. And they had told me, like, we don't want anybody bothering them. And we've been asked to make sure nobody bothers them. And the one producer was just like, fuck it, and grabbed me and was kind of just like, I care more about our relationship with you than him anyway. And it was this crazy thing where I was just standing, leaning against a wall with a Sharpie in my hand. And everybody was leaning against the other wall for some reason.
Yeah.
And I just leaned against the other wall. So his security comes around the corner, clocks the hallway, and they all line up on the other side because they just quickly do this evaluation. They're like, okay, we got to block everybody here. And then there's this one kid, I guess we'll let him slide. And yeah, he came around the corner and I had my pen out and he saw the Sharpie and I think he clocked what was happening. And I was just like, Morris, I'm like, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to take up any time. I just need you to know your music it's just meant so much to me. And I'm wondering if there's any way you'll sign me. And he stopped and he really took his time. And that's when I was like, just your songs, like they really saved me and they really meant so much. And he was just like, oh, it's so hard to believe. And like left.
Let
Like
me see
very,
it. Let me see the
yeah.
tattoo again. And that is his. That's his how he wrote it.
That's how he wrote it. If I remember right, that was 2008. So I've had that for a bunch of years. And then it's funny. I'd love your advice on it because I'm like, he's been saying all this insane stuff. And I have a son now. And I'm
Yeah.
like, and now my son's going to grow up and be like, who's that guy? Why do you have his name on your arm? So I've been thinking about maybe covering it.
No, no.
I go back
Listen.
and forth.
I don't think so. He changed. He changed the way you look at life. He
Yeah.
made you feel normal and okay, and because of that, that's more important than all the other stuff. And people get older, they get senile, they start egos and this and whatever. It's like, art from the artist. You can do that. I think, unless he goes completely like, fuck the
Yeah.
Jews, like the Jews need to die. Final solution was right. Unless he
I
does
feel like
that.
he's like so close. I feel
Yeah,
like he's so
no,
close.
dude, I hope not. God forbid. Like, at least want to see him in concert first. And if he does do
Yeah.
it, I want it at our show.
There
And
you go.
then,
There
then
you
we
go.
can immediately leave and go, all right, Chris, I think it's time we go cover it up. How about a nice tribal? You want to go
Yeah.
with a tribal
I'll
thing?
just get something truly like that's how bad it would be that I could go get like a late 90s tramp stamp style tribal thing with some Asian characters that I'm not sure what they spell, and it would probably be better than
I
whatever I've
love
got.
it. I love it. All right, we've got some Patreon questions, and then we'll get you out of here. We got some final stuff. This has been so much fun, Chris.
Thanks. I'm sorry
So
we barely talked about the album itself.
fuck this album. It's about the experience. It's about you've said more explaining that than the us talking about the facts from the record. Do you know what I mean? That's in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I'm just bummed. I had some other things I wanted. Can I get just a couple things out?
Yeah. Can I pee real quick? Let me pee
Go
real
for
quick.
it.
Hold on.
Sure. And I'm just gonna say a bunch of shit, and he won't know what I said. I could say anything. I could start ranting about Jews. I could start ranting about Jews right now. No, I would never. I would never. Imagine if I did. Imagine if while he was gone, because he thinks this is all going to be cut, and maybe it will be, but
Yeah.
maybe it won't be.
Um,
Imagine if right now, while it was being recorded and he was gone, I was like, actually, that stuff he said that's the if Morrissey had said that, I'd probably actually be giving him more money right now. And then I wonder if Josh even goes back and would listen to it. Like, does he listen to his own episodes? This will be a good test of does he listen back to his own episodes? Because I could just be like, man, like when he said that stuff about Kevin Spacey victims, I was mad. If he had said the thing you said, maybe I would have been. That would have been, yeah, that's the Morrissey I really love. But yeah, we're all gonna find out together if Josh even listens back to his own episodes. Because if you keep this in, okay.
All right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I drink so much water for my vocal cords have been off, so I have to like this is going to be the only time I talk today. And then because I have 3 shows in JFL Toronto this weekend where I have to sing and I have to, it's a lot. And I'm going to see totally, well, I bet they're influenced 100%. I'm going to see My Chemical Romance tonight.
Oh, Jersey.
In Jersey, yeah.
Jersey, yeah.
And it's cool because they reached out to me. I got followed by 2 of the members, and then one of them sent me a message and was like, "Hey man, we really like your clips, like the shit you've been posting." And I'm like, "Really?" I was like, "Oh, dude, I'm a fan of yours." And they're like, "If you want to come to any shows," and I'm like, "Dude, I'll go to all 3 of them." They did Brooklyn and then 2 in Jersey, but then Brooklyn fell on the same night as Pearl Jam at Madison Square Garden, and I got a good seat for that, and I had to go to that. And I was like, "Oh, I have 2 more chances to see MCR," and then last night they played and I got offered, fucking Esty was like, "Will you please do this show?" I was like, "Yes." It's like, I'm still afraid of her. So,
of course.
So if she asks, I'm like, "Of course, Queen Esty, whatever you want, whatever I can do." So I'm excited tonight, but
that's a band I have to imagine they all were listening to the Smiths growing up. With
the
stuff
yeah.
They do. Have to.
I think any band, you know, in that punk, I mean, I don't think like Blink 182 or anybody like that, but I mean, there's the influences. You said the Killers, and I was like, oh my God, yes. I think the Killers' 2 biggest influence are Bruce Springsteen and the Smiths.
Yeah, I think that they're on record with that. And like My Chemical Romance is like, you know, like a very flamboyant front person with some like driving angrier than you expect it to be music underneath these lyrics that are shouting things like, "I'm not okay." I'm like, if you're not fans of the Smiths, they at least boxed out some room where that can exist
completely
more easily than before them. For
and
sure.
I'm not like, I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm not. I think Welcome to the Black Parade was, out of all the bands that were considered emo, I think that's probably top 3. It's just it's like you said, it's Bowie. It's like almost like their Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to like it. I was like, who's this band? And then I was like, holy shit, this fucking album is brilliant. So I'm excited. I'm excited tonight.
They're very creative, very cool.
What were you saying? You said some stuff you wanted to talk about.
I just like, since we didn't dive deep in the album, I just want to say, I think Well, I Wonder is one of the tracks. That's like a real gentle track. And I know I said I like the punky stuff, but I'm like, it's one of my favorite Smith songs. And it's one of the ones where I listen to it and I go, that's this band growing up and they're nailing something there. That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore is a song that I always skipped when I was younger. And that's a song that when I had my own kid, I started listening to it pretty obsessively and was like, this song is beautiful. That song is just like, you have to stand up for the people who get shitted on in this world. That's the whole message of that song. Is like, I'm not going to laugh at your jokes about people who already take it on the fucking chin. I'm like, what a beautiful message to send with a song. I think what she said is such a ripper. I think fucking Barbarism Begins at Home. I tend to skip. That song's way too long and crazy. And it's kind of like got this weird disco funk feel to it. But like, you listen to what Johnny Marr is doing on the guitar in that song, and it's bananas. It's bananas. And then I also say, for all the things Morrissey takes shit on, people make fun of him for being a vegetarian. Like he's shut down shows because he asks them not to cook meat while he plays. And if he smells meat cooking, he'll walk off stage and people will be like, fucking Morrissey. I'll say this. That's the one thing I don't get mad about when everybody else does, because that dude has been on brand with this message since this album came out. And my wife's been a vegetarian for over 30 years. And she's like, when I was in high school, the reason it was cool to be vegetarian was because of Morrissey.
I believe
Now,
that.
like, so there's one thing where I'm like, make fun of him for so much of it, roll your eyes at so much of it, but he has been sticking to his guns on that forever. That being said, he sometimes plays Meat is Murder live and like shows video of animals getting slaughtered while it's happening.
Ugh.
And it's too much, mods.
Sure,
Too
sure.
much. Not why
It's
I came to the show. And
I
I've
mean,
seen him 14 times. I'm like, once I've seen it 6 times, I don't
yeah.
need to watch the cow slaughter video 8 more times.
Oh man,
I'm with you. I get it, buddy. You know?
yeah, yeah. It's trust me, if I want to be vegetarian, I just can't. I
my,
can't.
my wife when I married a vegetarian it became much easier, so it's been a few years for me and I feel more awake and alive because all I used to do was just eat fucking sausage and beef all day every day.
Yeah. Fuck, man. Are those beef and sausages good?
They are. My problem was then I'd just sit on the toilet constipated for 7 hours and it stopped immediately when I was like, oh, okay.
Oh,
I
dude.
guess I guess eating healthy buys you time back in the day where you're not just sitting here trying to poop and failing.
Yeah, that's just, I heard another comic say that too, and but then I figured out the reason, not the reason, the way to cure that, a stool softener. Bam, bam, bam,
Oh,
bam.
Metamucil in my
Yeah.
40s. Every day I rock it out. Love it. Love it.
Here's some cool things about this. So we, with this list, we're going off the Rolling Stone 2012 list. This is the third of 4 times we've talked about the Smiths. We had Christina P for the self-titled release. That came in number 473. We had Michael Rosenbaum do Louder Than Bombs at 369. And then we're going to talk about The Queen is Dead at 218. That's 2 years from now. On the 2020 re-rank, which came out September of 2020, this is, you might get upset about this. Only The Queen is Dead made the cut. The other 3 records we've talked about haven't. But The Queen is Dead jumped to 113. So it jumped 105 spots. So to show you how influential that record is.
I actually think that's fair. I mean, Louder Than Bombs is like a singles collection. The first album, like I said, I think it sets the table and it's amazing, but I could see them getting squeezed out with 8 more years of good music. And Meat is Murder, I would think, should still have landed on there, but for The Queen is Dead to make a jump, because like I said, I'm excited to listen to the episode where you listen to that one, because it's just like,
I might have
of
you back, Chris. I'm probably going to have you
dude,
back
say the word, because
because
it's fun for me to realize that you were not a huge fan, but now you've listened to 3 albums and it's like, oh, and that one you just listen to it and you go, oh, they fucking did it. Like, you could listen to this band set out to do something, and most times you don't even sense that. And with them, you sense like, oh, they're really trying something. And The Queen is Dead. Take a step back. You go, fuck me, they did it. They did the thing. They were indicating they wanted to get to something. And I'm listening to an album and I'm realizing they actually nailed their mission.
I'm
That
excited.
mission statement
Yeah.
that this band got together for, they're one of the few bands that actually nailed it. They actually nailed it.
I'm excited. I'm as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to cook lunch and put it on, and then probably I might actually just go through all 4 records today and just start from the
That's
beginning.
interesting. Yeah.
And then I might do that because that actually feels like, because now I know everything and kind of like it's such a small window of material that I could listen to that in 4 hours. I'm done with most of their catalog. So yeah, dude. All right.
And then when you listen to the last one, keep in mind too, like Queen is Dead was so great. And then Strange Ways, by the time it came out, they broke up. They never toured that material. Like, that's how quick it was over. Like, not just 4 albums, like barely got the 4th album out. Done.
Do you know why? Because I know you probably do, but why did they break up? Like, what is the issue?
There's like a ton of reasons that people have said. Like, a lot of the fans like to get like melodramatic about it and say, oh, Morrissey fell in love with Johnny Marr. That's what you always heard growing up. Everything you read is that it's way more simple than that, which was basically they tried to hire managers and they were just a tough, opinionated band, Morrissey in particular. Johnny Marr was basically booking all their shows and dealing with everything because they couldn't find someone they trusted to come in and handle that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing when you're like a 17, 18-year-old kid booking local shows at bars to handle all the paperwork. But when it's like, hey, we're doing an American tour, playing venues that are thousands of seats, he was just overworked and underappreciated and in over his head is what you read. Is that Johnny Marr basically pulled the plug and was like, I can't balance all the egos in this band, my own included, and all the logistics, and be constantly fighting with venue managers and our record company people. Like they were a very emotional group of people, and he didn't want to be the point guard anymore, and they couldn't find somebody else that they trusted to handle it from the outside.
So why won't do you think they won't get back together?
So the bassist and the drummer were never credited as writing on the songs. They're all Morrissey and Marr.
Mhm.
And they both sued Morrissey and Marr and basically said, hey, we wrote our fucking parts. You need to pay us as songwriters. So after the Smiths broke up, Andy Rourke, if I remember, he took a buyout, and Morrissey has said some nice things about him, or like lukewarm things at the very least.
Mhm.
Mike Joyce took it all the way to court and got a bunch of money for the songs from royalties. So it all just money stuff, basically.
Yeah. But why won't Johnny and Morrissey though? If they're the two most important pieces that you really really need,
There's
like
been quotes along the way. Like at one point, Morrissey was asked about it and said, I don't think you'll ever see a Smith show again, but I wouldn't be shocked if you saw a Morrissey and Marr show. That was 20 years ago. And then the sense I get, if I'm being totally honest, is that Johnny Marr, by all accounts, everyone I've ever met who has met him says that he's an incredibly sweet guy. If you watch interviews with him, he seems like the cool. First of all, here's the other thing about the Smiths, man. Every picture you see of them, no matter how ridiculous Morrissey looks, if you're like, that could be cool, that could be not, that's subjective. I challenge any human being to look at a picture of Johnny Marr ever and say anything except that he's the fucking cool. He's always got a fucking great haircut. He's always rocking like sunglasses and a cool jacket. He's just visibly is cool. And
yeah.
then he comes off as really nice. And my guess is that the more controversy Morrissey causes, the
Yeah, the more
less
he walks away
less he
from
wants to
it.
drag his good name
Yeah.
into it, which
Nah,
is
that
such a
makes
shame.
sense. That
Because
makes sense.
he seems so nice. And then you look at him, you're like, God damn, that guy seems fucking cool.
And Johnny's kind of, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he's still playing. Like I think he joined Modest Mouse for a
He
little bit.
did. Yeah, he did.
What did you think of that when that happened with Modest Mouse being who they are? And I mean, were
I
you
thought it
like,
was
fuck yeah?
cool.
Yeah,
I
you
like it
did?
made me yeah, I mean, I like Modest Mouse. There's a bunch of their songs that I like. They're definitely like that indie rock stuff gets real smart and complicated for me, but I like a lot of theirs. And
Hmm.
when he joined, I was like, what a cool thing that this dude who was so influential, like he's so influential that bands he influenced ask him to join. That's fucking cool, man.
But also the balls on Modest Mouth to like
Yeah.
ask if I could, hey Johnny, I'm just if you do you want to join our band? I mean, I
And
know we're never going to be on the level that you guys are, but maybe you can jump us up a little notches.
and he's done a bunch of like movie soundtrack. I'm blanking. There's some movie that Inception maybe that he like
Can you look,
there's
Edgar? Can you
movies
look
that
that
you look
up?
up, you find out he did the soundtrack and you're like, oh, the soundtrack for that movie was so fucking rad and moody and helped that movie. And I remember it off the top of my head that it helped. And he's done a lot of that stuff too. Yeah.
Dude, fucking, I'm Team Johnny Marr.
He's great.
I'm Team Marr, dude. He rules.
He seems really nice. Seems like a really nice, laid back guy in every interview you see. And I've met people who meet him who are like, yeah, he's just disarmingly cool.
Category. Here we go. Click on that. Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. Oh, the best superhero movie ever.
Yeah. Oh wait, no, the Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's
Oh, never
not
mind.
Spider-Man
That's not
2.
Spider-Man
Yeah,
2.
that's the fucking dude
Look, he
from
took a
the
swing.
Social Network. That's he only done 3.
That's weird because I could have sworn Inception was one of them.
Inception. That's fucking Hans Zimmer or Thomas, that other guy, the other dude that does all the soundtracks on Penning No Time to Die soundtrack. Oh, he's done more. Hey, what is this? Johnny Marr at an event
Oh,
for
so maybe
Inception.
he did them with someone else, so they're listed separately.
Here, go down on the IMDb page a
I
little
mean,
bit.
look how fucking cool that guy is.
Music
Just the
department.
picture at the top. That's Johnny Marr's that old in that top. Yeah,
He did colors.
dude, he's done so much cool shit. He's so cool.
I love him. Yeah, dude, Amazing Spider-Man 2 can fucking cram it with walnuts. That movie is fucking butt cheeks. But yeah, dude, look at this. I mean, all this stuff he did. All right, let me get my screen back. I want to ask him these Patreon questions. All right. So we have our Patreon subscribers. This one's from TJ Gillespie. Morrissey turned out to be a closed minded, xenophobic prat who seems bent on destroying his own legacy. But Johnny Marr is still the best, and the music the Smiths made still means a lot to me. Can't listen to Maz's solo stuff much anymore, but Quid, Strange Ways, and Louder Than Bombs are all classics. That's not a question, TJ. That's just a statement. Do you agree with what he's saying?
I feel like we've covered that pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, I feel like we have. Yeah.
I will say the one guilty pleasure I have is that his solo stuff is much more hit and miss than the Smiths, but the album Vauxhall and I, whoo, that is a start to finish great album.
It's good.
It's so good.
I don't think I've ever
So
listened
good.
to, and if I don't know, because I might have heard it and just been like, oh, that's probably the Smiths. I don't think I know one recognizable song by Morrissey. I've never seen a music video for one of his solos. I don't know anything.
I would say the Smiths are remarkable because like the albums are all so good, and they've only really put out a couple bad. So they did a cover called Golden Lights. That's insane. There's a song on the last album called Death at One's Elbow that I think is really bad. I don't even know if they did any other bad songs. Morrissey, the singles are great. The albums are hit or miss. But Vauxhall and I is start to finish great.
All right, I'll check that out. All right, this one is, I don't think this is another question, but they pay, so I got to read it. Quell B. Josiah was never a fan of their music or even listened to them until episode 473. Oh, I love that. Now I've had a few turns at their music on Dark Lord Spotify, yes. Know a few of their hits and can see their place in post-punk music and how they influenced many 90s, early 2000 grunge and indie rock. When their music comes up on shuffle, I dig it, but that's about it. From what I've heard and read, Morrissey is a grade A asshole. Oh,
I have his name. He signed my arm.
Dude. There's people with much worse, dude. Come on, man. Somebody's got an R. Kelly tattoo somewhere. You know what I mean? They got I believe I can fly on my arm. Listen, it's when you find out about most of the people. I love that movie by Woody Allen, which is another person we can't really talk about, but Woody Allen made a movie called Celebrity, and it was about when you pull what you see in public in what they was presented with. They all look perfect and charming, and this is before TMZ and stuff when he made this movie. But when you pull that curtain back, most of them are pieces of shit, because all human beings have these things that we do that, if everybody came out and saw it, it would change everybody's view of who we are. And, unfortunately, Morrissey put it out there a little bit more.
Yeah.
It doesn't make him better or worse than anybody. He's a human being living a human experience, trying to do his best. And for some reason, he feels that that's right. And to some people, that is right, regardless if the majority of the world believes that. But that doesn't, dude, if you look at what John Lennon did, he beat his wife.
Goodness.
He was a heroin addict. Yeah, he basically, Julian, didn't even love him as he loved his other son more than he loved the other. And that's and there's books and books on it. And yet people still every day go to strawberry fields in Central Park and put flowers down and cry. And, look, man, I met Kid Rock a few months ago, and he was the nicest guy I'd ever met in my life, and he's fucking batshit. So, I love Ball with the Ball. I don't know if I'm going to get it tattooed to my arm.
Right. Yeah, with Morrissey, if anything, it's like a cautionary tale, and how do you age gracefully? How do you have self-awareness as an artist? How do you take a deep breath? Because so much of it, I think, is that just it seems very obvious that he just craves the attention that comes with the negative stuff. He'd rather have that than fade away gracefully. And that is eye-opening to see. And especially as someone who is an artist my whole life for 22 years now, who's getting older, it's oh, I need to start thinking about that. How do you have the grace to take a deep breath and see where the conversation's at? How do you get older as an artist and continue to make things and not get threatened by the fact that young people are also making stuff now, and maybe it's going to be more relevant because it's new and it's shiny and people like it, and it's okay for you to occupy a corner of the world.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
maybe you don't need to constantly get press if it means you have to keep saying insane stuff. It feels a little bit like an addiction to me, and it's hard to watch.
Yeah. It was funny. I was talking with another comic who's a big hair metal fan. I know this isn't the same, but I just feel like this is a perfect time to tell this story. I don't know if you saw maybe it was like a month or so ago, Tommy Lee from Motley Crue, uh, by accident posted a picture on Instagram of his dick out, like him like sitting there and his fucking long hog,
Oh,
which
we've all
is
seen it.
we've
It's
all
beautiful.
seen it,
What a
but
beautiful
this is
piece.
I mean,
Beautiful
beautiful
piece.
dick. Yeah,
I mean,
dude.
sculptor's dream.
Like
Sculptor's dream.
the
Having
mount
subject matter that
the
perfect.
Mount Rushmore of dicks.
Put it
Like,
right up there. Yeah.
yeah, dude. And he posted it, and everybody's like, "What are you doing?" And oh my god. But what it did when he found out, he did that on purpose to draw up the ticket sales for their tour with Def Leppard and it worked. It worked. Now, is that right or is it wrong? What's worse, posting a picture of your dick or doing what Eric Clapton did and saying brown people are ruining England?
Listen, if you had a dick so long, not just long, girthy, but not
Thicky, a biggie
but,
thicky.
but it doesn't look like it's gonna hurt. It looks, like we saw Pam Anderson take it and seemingly enjoy it. Like it seems like it occupies the perfect slot of length, girth, vein placement, and honestly, masterful usage. I mean, he drove a boat with it. We all watched him. He drove a boat with it.
Yeah.
He drove a boat. He operated a seaborne vessel. That's how perfect his dick is. If you had a dick so perfect it could sell out a stadium tour, you'd be showing it off too.
100%. 100%.
I can't fault him for that.
No, God, no. Tommy, I love you. He's married to my ex-girlfriend. Isn't that crazy? I talk about this all the time. I'm not hung up. I think it's the coolest shit in the world. Brittany is one of my closest friends still. But I was such a big Motley Crue fan when I was a kid. So to know that like I was engaged at one point to the woman that's now married to Tommy Lee. It's like, it's one of those moments, Chris, where you're like,
so good.
but you're just like, God, I can't, I'm so glad I followed my dreams. Cause if I didn't, I would just be, hey, Motley Crue. I loved them when I was fucking 13. And now it's like, oh no, I have a fucking weird connection. Life is crazy, dude. Life is crazy. And I
love it.
I am so excited that you did this. I can't wait for people to hear this. All right, I'm going to ask you the same questions I ask everybody. I might throw in an extra one
Cool.
to kind of smooth it out because I didn't get to this one question. I think we might have answered it. I'll open with this. Do you think Johnny Marr is the single most underrated musician from any acclaimed band?
I think he's definitely up there for sure. I mean, I can't claim to be an encyclopedia of music. I can say that I think he's vastly underrated. Guitar aficionados honor him properly, and I think if you are a casual music fan, you don't realize how many of your favorite guitarists try to figure his shit out because nobody's done what he did. To this day, nobody's pulled off what he pulled off from 1982 to 1986. People are still trying to figure out how he pulled that shit off, and I don't think people understand the influence he's had.
No, I believe it. I believe it. All right. This is not another question I ask everybody else, but I just want to ask you this because I'm curious to get your answer. If the Smiths were an ice cream flavor, what would they be?
Ooh. It would be a very weird flavor. It would be like it wouldn't make sense. It would be like an unusual flavor as a base. Like it would be some weird like chocolate lavender, like something like that to account for the femininity. But then it would have like four things mixed into it that don't necessarily complement. It would have like caramel, but then also like licorice and these things that seem like they wouldn't make any sense together. And then when you when you take a bite and you get all of them together, you're like, oh, actually, like this is not for everybody, but I want this taste in my mouth forever. But it's the type of thing that when you describe it, you go, that should not work at all. It's disgusting. It would be like, yeah, caramel, licorice, and then also like,
Lavender.
yeah, like lavender mixed in, and then like pistachios ground up to a size where it's like either make it a whole pistachio or really grind it down. Why'd you make it this weird middle ground? Like it's a bunch of stuff that all seems unappealing on its own, let alone mixed together. And then when you taste it, you're like, fuck me. This works.
They'd sell it in Brooklyn. 100%. It would be sold
Yes,
at
they'd
some
sell it
little
at Van
shop in
Leeuwen.
Brooklyn. Yeah, dude.
Manhattan Avenue, Van Leeuwen. They would stock it. It would sell out every day.
I wanted to ask you this too, because we were talking about Tommy Lee's dick. Out of the band, who do you think has the biggest dick in the Smiths?
Oh, Johnny Marr. I mean, the way this man carries himself, he's got big dick energy. This
BD,
guy
yeah.
is fucking cool and confident.
Yeah.
And yeah, that guy clearly he knows how to bring it.
He's
If he doesn't
packing.
have a huge dick, he certainly knows how to please a woman orally.
Yeah.
Because he has a quiet, unspoken confidence that speaks to the fact that he's not worried about anything.
Oh, I love it. All right. These are the questions I ask everybody. All right. Man, this is fun. All right. What's your favorite song on this record?
My favorite song on this record, ooh, it's so tough. I mean, I think the best song is Well, I Wonder. My favorite song might be What She Said, because it's just told from the perspective of like, I think the lyrics are so fucking heartbreaking and funny. The Smiths are also such a funny band, which we didn't even get into, but people who think that those lyrics are taking themselves seriously are missing the fact that Morrissey understands that some of the shit he's saying is extremely funny. And that song, I think, is just so melodramatic in a way that's hilarious. And I like it.
Yeah, it was, I really dug the opening track, the Headmaster Ritual. I didn't even understand that lyric like you went into at the beginning. It just like I wasn't paying attention to it as much when I first really started listening to it. And I think that makes me like that song even more because I really fucking liked that song.
Dude, it's
Yeah,
good.
it's good.
It's
It's really good.
I feel like that is a song where if that came on and there were a bunch of kids sitting down, when it starts, they fucking stand up. And that to me is the mark of a great start to an album of like, oh shit, I'm not sitting down through this. What is this?
Yeah.
And then, oh man, just
Did,
thinking of how much vandalism and how many windows got broken in Manchester in the weeks after this album came out because this guy, it's like fucking belligerent ghouls run Manchester schools, spineless swine cemented minds. Sir leads the troops, jealous of youth, calling out his teachers. You're old. You're jealous of youth. Same old suit since 1962. You know, there's some dickhead who wore an old shabby ass suit in his school who gave the
yeah.
kids a hard time where he's like, he did the military two-step down the nape of my neck. I want to go home. I don't want to stay. Has anything summed up my feelings about school more than that? Like these old dickheads, they're jealous of you because you're young. They give you a hard time. I want out. I want out. Fuck these people.
Yeah.
God damn, I love that song. I mean, that might be.
All right. Now you kind of mentioned this one earlier, but this is just I don't know if you phrase it. What song you don't want to say hate, but what's your least favorite song on the record? What do you skip over?
Rush Home Ruffians. I mean, they all have good lines. Rush Home Ruffians has lyrics I like, but it's got that rockabilly thing I don't love. Barbarism Begins at Home. It's 7 minutes long. The part of me that came at this from the punk angle just can't stomach a 7-minute long song.
Yeah.
And again, I listen to it. I go, Johnny Marr is incredible, but it's just not as much my thing. I love the fast stuff that's like they haven't quite outgrown punk. Headmaster Ritual.
Yeah.
I Want the One I Can't Have. What She Said. And then, that joke isn't funny anymore. And Well, I Wonder. Those are the songs where I feel like those are the songs that could have fit on Queen is Dead because that's them growing up and that's them realizing their potential. So much love to those songs too. Yeah, it's Rush Home Ruffians. It's Barbarism Begins at Home.
On Barbarisms. It was long. And I
Yeah.
mean, it was a lot of the same. All right. I'm excited about this one. It's a two-part question. Okay. One, can you fuck to this record? And two, if you had to pull one song out to fuck to put on your sex playlist, what do you fucking do?
I have fucked to this record.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder. That song, Well, I Wonder, is a romantic song.
Yeah.
I mean, that first line, I think it's well, I wonder, do you hear me when you sleep? I hoarsely cry. Well, I wonder, do you see me when you pass? I have died. Oh, keep me in mind. It's such a sweet, beautiful song. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that song. I mean, now if you have that song on and then Barbarism Begins at Home starts up and you're not,
Yeah.
you got to fit it in 4 minutes. Because, well, I wonder if that's done and all of a sudden it's that you'll just start giggling. You can't.
Yeah.
But I mean, that joke isn't funny anymore. That's a really romantic song. Like,
You can,
yeah.
I think, I don't know if it's funny. I was talking we did an episode with Jeff Buckley Grace, and my guest was the lead singer of Incubus, Brandon
Oh,
Boyd.
wow.
And we asked him if you could fuck to that. And he said, and I almost want to feel this is the same thing with Jeff Buckley's lyrics. He's such a great lyricist, has such a great voice, and the music is once again probably really influenced by this band. It's like
He famously covered a Smith song. Jeff
I,
Buckley covered a song called I Know It's Over. And his cover of, I don't usually like Smith's covers. His cover of that song is so heartbreaking. And the Smiths put out a live record called Rank. And you'll hear it. I Know It's Over is on Queen is Dead, dude. And it's good. You'll hear it. You'll be like, oh, it's killer. When you listen to the live version on Rank, it's like, makes the hair on your arm stand up. It's
wow.
crazy. And Jeff Buckley's cover of it too. Yeah.
I'm excited. I love anything you noted, but what I'm saying is it's like sex is because he's very earthy and spiritual and and he's on a different astral plane. So he was like, when I have sex with a person, it's you're becoming one with them and blah blah blah. And when you have music on, especially like this, it just takes you out of that moment because you can't not notice how incredible the music is and what they're saying. Like I can fuck to The Cure. I have fucked to The Cure. I fucked to Disintegration a couple of days ago. It's a great record. I love the Massive Attacks, the Portisheads, and I ask this question to everybody. I just don't know. You really have to be track specific with the Smiths.
Yes,
like This Charming Man, and it's not even the saying man in it. It would make me think of fucking a dude. It's just it's
adrenaline. There's adrenaline inside that music, and it's not the same adrenaline you're looking for in bed.
But you can mosh. I love that. I mean, I don't know if you can fuck to the Smiths, but after you said that mosh pit is fucking nuts, I am so excited. I just wish I could have been there when they were young and it was like the band, I think much like you. Yeah. So you could really feel what that was like to be, you can go see, I can go see Bad Brains now. It's not the same. You know what I mean? That energy. And you can go see Morrissey now. But it's probably not the same, especially when England was the way England was and the Smiths were young and powerful. That being said, I would fuck to off
this album, it's Well I Wonder.
Yeah.
Queen is Dead. There is a light that never goes out. That is, I mean, I don't know if you could fuck to it. You could make love to it for sure. Yes. That song is so romantic. I Know It's Over. You could absolutely, but then again, like, you're going to hear, there's a song called Frankly, Mr. Shankly on Queen is Dead. You could not fuck to that. Song is crazy.
All right. This is the last question. What is your elevator pitch to get somebody to listen to this record?
I think what I would say is you've heard about the Smiths casually. You have an idea of what they are in your mind. There's a lot more to it than you know. It's angrier. It's driven by this mission to fucking throw some punches at the world. And if you can look past the idea that you think they're just kind of like The Cure and like a bootleg emotional band, the Smiths can catch you on a right day and actually make you feel okay about shit you don't feel okay about. And not every band can do that.
I completely agree. The only thing I don't agree with is that you keep bringing up The Cure and people put them together. I think they're so different, man.
I do too. They always got lumped together. And Morrissey and Robert Smith hate each other.
Oh,
Robert Smith once said something along the lines of, when I found out Morrissey was a vegetarian, I started eating more meat. That's how much he hates Morrissey.
He was eating a lamb shank in front of him. He's like, "Hello, Morrissey."
Like, absolutely, they do not like each other, those two. But those bands are always lumped together, and I like them both, but they're different. They're different.
Very, very, very different.
The Cure is much more. A lot of people think the Smiths are just like doing what the Cure does, not as well, in terms of like wearing eyeliner and wearing like the heart on the sleeves. But the Smiths are a much angrier band. The Smiths are coming from a lineage that I think is much different. And if you, I would say the same thing. Like, if you're somebody out, if you like Minor Threat, re-listen to the Smiths with it in mind that I said, in my mind, Minor Threat and the Smiths occupy the same part of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll start to realize, like, oh, these are just like, these are young, pissed people who want the world to stop fucking judging them and stop fucking with them. And when that part of the Smiths unlocks, it's really a special thing for a lot of people.
Wow, that's perfect. Promote away, dude. Whatever you got to promote.
Yeah, I'm going on the road all the time. chrisgeth.com for tickets. I don't know when this is coming out, but it's like Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago, Atlanta, Athens, Raleigh, Asheville. Those are all coming up between now and the end of the year. So would love to meet people out on the road. Would love to talk to other Smiths fans. And like you were saying, like my act is, I get out there, I get jokes going, but I also tell stories and bring stuff up. It's different than what other people are doing. I'm proud of it. Would love for you to come out and see it. So chrisgeth.com.
Go see him, everybody. This was great. You're coming back for Queen
So
is Dead.
fun.
It's 2 years. 2 years from now. Mark your calendar.
Let me know.
Okay?
I love that you know. I love that you can track the date of everything because of the way you're doing it.
The final episode is May 28th, 2028.
My child will be in kindergarten then. I will be. That's wild. You know what you're doing in exactly 2 years, and there will be massive life changes by then.
100%.
If I'm still alive, I'll be here.
I mean, I just want to see who's gonna. I'm like, are we gonna have a civil war?
Like, yeah. Are we gonna be in different countries? Like, because the borders will be redrawn.
Is Russia gonna like start a nuclear war with the world? Like, it's so crazy. But what I do know is that episode will drop 2 years. I might be in a fucking tunnel somewhere. Like, all right, everybody, Queen is dead. You guys wait. Shh, they're coming. Quiet, everybody. All right. So, what did you think about the track 2? This is great,
so
dude.
Funny.
This was so great.
Thanks
you,
for
brother.
having me, man. That was true joy. So
my
fun.
pleasure.